hundreds of prisoners who were being sent to live and work down on Parchment Farm. The man in charge of the prison was James K. Vardaman, who was also Mississippi's governor. His racist opinions earned him his nickname, the White Chief. Over the next 30 years, Mississippi's authorities would increase the size of the penal farm 3 times to accommodate a growing number of mostly black convicts who were being sent to Parchment. Men like William Patterson, a convicted murderer who arrived at Parchment to serve a life sentence in 1912. And Ned Banks, another murderer who arrived here with a life sentence in 1916. Because of the racial makeup of the inmate population, critics held that Mississippi's courts were handing down a so-called Jim Crow justice, unfairly convicting blacks in order to put them to work as unpaid farm laborers for the state. For many of these critics, the link to Mississippi's past was inescapable. At Parchment Farm, it seemed, slavery had managed to survive the Civil War.
Ooh, too close.
There's a great similarity between the way Parchment was set on a slave plantation. The idea was that it had predominantly black convict population, like 75 to 78%, 1900. The idea was to bring convicts up here, put them in an environment exactly like law-abiding blacks, white, field workers, everything else in the city had, and let them succeed or fail through that. And if they succeeded, they got the rules.
The state's penal code made no distinction between juvenile and adult offenders, and at least one convict in 4 was an adolescent. In that way, little had changed by the time Albert Harris arrived in 1981.
Well, when I first got here, I was 16 years old. They sent me to Unit 29. I almost fathered the young one over there at the time.
It was not his age, but the nature of his crime that got Harris sent to Parchment Farm.
Murder, committed murder, and robbery. And got a life sentence just avoided the death penalty by half. You know, that scared me, man. Even though I had committed a gruesome act like as I did, you know, it just scared the crap out of me. You know, because I thought they were going to try to kill me. You know, and I couldn't rest until I had got sentenced.
Harris expects he will spend the rest of his life here. One more name and number in Mississippi's enormous prison farm.
We have some that range from a year, maybe for DUI felony. That ranges all the way up to mandatory life without parole. We also have death row offenders who are here for committing heinous crimes. Just about any crime that you can think of. We have age limits from 14 all up to offenders maybe 80 years of age. We have all age groups here.
But at Parchment, age is less important than the length of your sentence. Some of Parchment's inmates will be here until they die.
Cotton, peas, and okra, and mostly peas and cotton. I done paid 150 pounds of cotton, 300 pounds of cotton a day.
By 1920, the regimen of life and labor was well established at the Mississippi State Penitentiary, better known as Parchment Farm. New inmates like Otis Hall, who had 4 years for grand larceny, and Jesse Favor, who had life for murder, would first be sent to front camp, where they were fingerprinted, photographed, and issued black and white striped uniforms known as ring-arounds. Then they faced their new life on Parchment Farm, a life that still resonates today.
When you first come in, you're told to strip. You strip in front of all the other men. Sometimes now there's women guards, you may have to strip in front of them. And your cavity search, it's a scary thing. I mean, you're coming into a world you've never known before. And it's one of the scariest places in the world. Everything changes. You've got somebody telling you what to do, when to, how to do. And
It's not always a guard. Sometimes it's inmates. You know, and here the strongest rule. Now, I'm not saying they survive, I say they grew.
Parchman's inmates still wear stripes on their pants. Trustees, or low-security inmates, wear green. Black stripes are worn by the gunmen, prisoners who must be supervised by armed correctional officers when they leave their cells. Red stripes are reserved for the highest-risk inmates at Parchman. They are deemed to be the most violent offenders, prone to escape and assault. They are closely watched and rarely leave their cells. Life in Parchman's original camps was simple and primitive. Meals were served outdoors. And at night, as many as 100 inmates were locked inside dormitories that were known as cages.
So many people I talked to about Parchman seemed appalled when I say that inmates ran the dormitories. There was a cage boss in charge, a canteen man who bounced him off in the power structure. They worked with the permission of the camp sergeant. If there was trouble, they were trying to do, it was the sergeant the captain turned to, the cage boss, to take care of it. How he took care of it was his business, but they wanted the convict fit for field work the next day.
Punishment was meted out with a brutal instrument called Black Annie.
Black Annie was a high. It was about 4.5 feet long. Some of them had holes cut in. When they hit you, they stuck that and reach up through them holes and be a blister. But that was a bad thing at all. Sure was. But she kept
like mom and dad.
man under control.
Job assignments did not reflect the inmate's crime or sentence, and all able-bodied men were sent to work in the long line.
The long line is a group of inmates that go out into the field and work every day. It's usually around 150 to 170 or 80 inmates in this line. And they do jobs such as chop cotton, pick peas, butter beans, dig ditches, clean out ditches. A driver, which worked for the sergeant, actually worked the inmates in the field.
I worked on long line about 8 months. Then I picked cotton about 2 months and put me in the kitchen because I couldn't pick cotton. Then I thought they were going to give me that open that they gave for not picking that 100-foot span of cotton.
By the 1930s, the long lines, the towers, and every other area of the prison were under the control of inmates armed with rifles. Known as trusty shooters, this elite class of prisoner was composed mostly of murderers with life sentences whom prison officials relied on for security until 1972.
Of course, trustee shooters are inmates that have been classified and approved to hold guns, and their mission is to keep other inmates from escape.
Trustee shooters were motivated by special privileges like private rooms and better food. A trustee shooter who killed an inmate running from the work line was often rewarded with an early release. Horace Carter is now 76 years old, but he first came to Parchman as a young man, barely 21.
1946. I killed that boy that robbed. I went back, I killed another boy, I got 5 years. And they let me out, another boy run me down, beat me up. The next day I met him and I killed him. So I've been here ever since.
Carter recalls the rewards he enjoyed as a trustee shooter during the 1950s, including sex.
We had good privilege. Had plenty to eat. Had plenty of hustling women coming here. And see, this is the first penitentiary ever had hustling women. Mississippi State Penitentiary. They used to come in here on buses, come in here on vans, on cars, and had inmates lined up over here that waiting to go in.
In 1956, sexual privileges, or conjugal visits as they are now known, were officially extended to the prison's married inmates. Small wooden cottages were built by the inmates to afford privacy. Prisoners and staff called them the Red House, or the Tunk.
Sometimes inmates that weren't married, if you didn't watch them real close, would slip and go to the Red House or to the Tunk. They would meet probably another inmate's sister or another inmate's cousin.
Man, them white fools you friends with, pair of fucking crazy motherfuckers. Yeah, that's true. They must have loved you showing them. Little boy running around the place, got it, bro. Man, they ain't the same like that. I made real bank fucking with those guys. Trust me, dog. With you, I get to run around and do
Perhaps
errands
the
and
most
shit,
important privilege afforded to Parchman's inmates today is job training. The convicts here learn marketable trades like bricklaying. Each morning, 40 inmates arrive in the prison's masonry shop to build cinder block walls, then take them apart and start over. State vehicles with dented fenders or scratched paint are repaired by inmates in the prison's auto body shop. The work experience prepares short-term inmates.
That's how you take it forward.
inmates and lifers to re-enter the workforce when and if they are released. At Parchman's aquaculture pond, inmates like Roosevelt Wilson operate machinery that feeds 20,000 catfish, enough to feed the prison's inmates and staff twice a year. Parchman's welding school is a hot and dangerous environment where inmates are trusted not to make weapons while they learn.
My name is Carl Frost, from Navy, Mississippi. That's about 70 miles from here.
Frost hopes for a job in a shipyard or as a steel worker when he completes his 15-year sentence for robbery.
Just the fact that I was facing 15 years mandatory, I mean, in the back of my mind, I couldn't see myself living through 15 years, but here today I've done over 10, and it's short now, and I can see a future. I can see a hope for myself.
The 1930s saw Parchman's population soar to more than 2,000. This reflected a growing number of women convicted of serious crimes. The women's camp would remain in operation until 1971. Mattie Washington, a cook from Sunflower County, had come to Parchman in 1928 with a life sentence for murder. Artless Randolph had 5 years for manslaughter. Corinne McBride, a 26-year-old housewife, would spend a year at Parchman as a convicted forger.
The women had their own camp at Parchman. In it, they sat like pupils in school with their old Singer sewing machines sitting in front of them, and they worked pretty much a 10-hour day. And what kind of stuff did they basically make with the sewing machines? The up and down, ring around convict stripe uniforms, but also the suit of clothing that a convict got on their release here.
The women were also called to the fields when extra labor was needed, or to jobs in the slaughterhouse where they prepared hog carcasses for prison consumption. It was an era that brought Parchman in closer contact with the outside world. In 1933, medical researchers came to the prison to recruit volunteers willing to risk death in the fight against encephalitis, an often fatal disease known at the time as sleeping sickness.
The test begins. In glass tubes with gauze at the ends are mosquitoes which were fed on victims of the St. Louis epidemic.
Can you feel a mosquito biting?
Yes, ma'am.
For their part, the inmates were promised a possible pardon for their meritorious acts. The state kept its word. 6 weeks later, the still healthy volunteers were granted their releases.
Wow. Wow.
But perhaps Parchman's greatest contribution to society was cultural. Scholars have linked these to the traditional work songs of the slaves who worked those fields more than 100 years before. Among the most celebrated of the Delta bluesmen to do time at Parchman was Booker T. Washington White, better known as Booker White. White recorded for the Victor label between 1930 and 1937, cutting blues and religious music. It was during this period he was sent to Parchman Farm for shooting a man. At Parchman, White escaped much of the heavy field work by performing for the inmates and trustees. Before White was released in 1939, he even taught the camp sergeant's son to play guitar.
And if you need some help, man, just send an invite to Code D for you.
his release, White's music had spread to the juke joints and dance halls of Mississippi, and his enduring classic, Parchman Farm Blues, has been performed by countless recording artists, including Eric Clapton and the Grateful Dead, and has also incarcerated other legends like McKinley Muddy Waters Morganfield, Eddie Sunhouse, and Hootie Ledbetter, better known as Leadbelly, who also served time at the prison farm in Louisiana. For modern audiences, Leadbelly's best-known song is probably Midnight Special.
Hello, this is Pegasus Lifestyle Management. How can I help? Great. The aircraft is waiting for you at our nearest airfield. We trust you'll be happy, sir.
The Midnight Special was a train that left Jackson, meandered through little towns in Mississippi Delta, picking up the wires for convicts on prison behavior. It arrived here right around dawn, and as it came up the tracks from the south, the light would shine on Camp 1, Black Camp. And legend came to hold that if the light of that train struck you, your woman was on board with a palm in her hand. Now, just remember the song, Let the Midnight Special shine its light on you.
I've seen a 17-year-old kid raped by 2 or 3 more. I've seen another one get killed and lay in his bed for 24 hours because the police counted him, thought he was still in his bed asleep. Numerous fights.
Hello, Pegasus Lifestyle Management. How can I help you?
Today there's a fight.
Your beautiful new aircraft is waiting at our nearest airfield. We hope you're very happy, sir.
Well, God is free. You know, but that cold steel here is going to shut them up every time. You know, and just how it goes, man.
It was dangerous then and it's still dangerous now. Back then, we had a thing called respect. You disrespect me, I had to straighten my business.
By 1970, Parchman Farm's reputation for danger and violence was well deserved. It was one of the few penal institutions in America that was still racially segregated. Its 13 camps were filled to overflowing. The only men inside who carried guns were inmates. In 1972, the State Board of Health warned that conditions in the camps made them unfit for human habitation.
You can look at the cages in 1972, and they're rat infested. They need paint jobs. It's terrible. The sewage system up here had gone down terribly by 72. You go into the shower up here, and you're standing in raw sewage. The convicts used to tease about getting a backup bath every time they flush the toilet.
The loudest cry for help came from an obscure, illiterate inmate named Nazareth Gates. He filed a lawsuit in federal court against the state of Mississippi. Gates charged that the living conditions at Parchman were unconstitutional. The court agreed. Parchman Farm was ordered to undergo drastic change or close.
They hired correction officers to figure out people who did inmate shooters. They integrated the inmates. They took down most of the old building with the building, and they had a training program first started.
The training program includes paramilitary exercises that prepare new recruits for the rigors of life here. The training extends to every facet of the job. Guards are well prepared to stop an escaping or assaultive inmate in his tracks. But even with constant training and a vigilant staff, no prison is immune to escape. The most recent successful breakout at Parchment occurred in May of 2000.
Well, let's speak from Unit 32 with our main security unit. By cutting slots in the windows, right on the windows, cut holes in there, put dummies in the beds, and crawled out of the windows.
The escaped convicts were John Willard, a convicted murderer, and Roy Harper, imprisoned for robbery.
They cut through this fence. The fence is triple layer razor wire at the bottom on the inside. They cut through this with a hacksaw blade.
Willard and Harper managed to walk away undetected by guards in the towers and cross through more than a mile of Parchman's farmland to freedom. Such an occurrence is a prison warden's worst nightmare.
We had that big safety field and we hope nobody gets hurt out of it when they escape. Because you want to catch them, recapture them, get them back to the custody part without any type of people get hurt, including inmates.
The escaped convicts were captured after 3 weeks on the run. They made it as far as Indiana before they were returned to their cells in Mississippi. In spite of the escape,
I can say that this is fake of some of you kids playing this video game.
To convey the pastoral charm and character of a rural Mississippi town.
Y'all don't change your mindset.
Some officers and staff live in modest clapboard houses that line Guard Row, the prison's main street. They raise children here. They go to church nearby. They even have their own fire department. But there is another side to Mississippi's penal farm.
I didn't make the fields like everybody else. The second day I was here, I was in a fight. The fourth day, I stabbed the guys in the fight with. When they took me to the fields, they told us to chop the cotton. Well, I cleaned my row off just as clean as your mother's floor. They gave me 5 licks with a hide after 4 shooters held me down. From then, I spent about 14 years on and off in a lockdown cell, 6x9 cell.
Unit 29 came online in November of 1981. At that time, it opened that night with 40 inmates to start cooking the food, and then they moved inmates in the first day of December.
In recent years, lockdown at Parchman Farm has meant a stay in Unit 29. The staff calls this high-security fortress the Concrete Palace.
How they lock me up again? I'm already locked up, then they lock me up in another cage. And look at you sagging in jail, so you know they fucking you. You all sagged out, dog. You got a belt on and you sagging, bro. What you got the belt on for, bro? The pants is already pants, but the belt hold them up. So all you saggers out there that sag y'all pants, penitentiary waiting on y'all. Every last one of y'all saggers. But I'll tell y'all exactly what it is. Wow. Dog getting jailed, bro.
They qualify to have a job, and then the ones that are in the lockup field is necessary segregation and lockup for different reasons. They are not out to work. They only out of their cell 1 hour a day.
For more than 100 years, the men and women who run the Mississippi State Prison at Parchman have struggled to maintain the balance between maximum security and farming, between punishment and brutality. They are charged with a curious set of tasks that include preserving life and taking it away. Before the duty of execution in Mississippi was assigned permanently to Parchman Farm in 1955, 73 people were put to death in a portable electric chair that was set up in the county where the crime was committed.
Look how they smiling. They were killing black people by droves then.
Some maximum security unit that houses 56 cells. E-custody inmates. These inmates
I was in
no
Templeman,
such as visitation,
but not in that one there. I was in Florida State Penitentiary.
gas chamber and the lethal injection room.
Mississippi has used its lethal injection room only twice since it was added in 1989. But the door to the prison's gas chamber has sealed 36 men inside as they gasped and struggled against a cloud of cyanide.
The first time they tried it, it was a miserable failure. Not many journalists showed up the second time.
In 1955, the first witnesses watched convicted murderer Gerald Gallego fight against the gas for nearly half an hour before he finally died. In 1983, witnesses looked on in horror as Jimmy Lee Gray, a convicted child killer, flailed and smashed his head wildly against the iron support pipe located a few inches behind the chair. A leather head restraint was added for subsequent executions before the gas chamber was retired in 1989.
Inhumane ass shit. Killing people. Bad enough they killed somebody. Now if they did on purpose or not, who are you to take their fucking life? Put them bitches in the cage. For life. It is what it is. Take their life. Shit, all you doing is stopping them from getting all the repercussions from what they done.
Have to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 months, 5.5 months. I've been trained as a certified drill instructor, and you use that just as you would in the military to train the guys to keep in step. Also, it also works to keep them in step.
The inmates are part of a program called Regimented Inmate Discipline, or RID. Like generations of prisoners who came to the farm before them, their songs tell their story.
Cadences, and it's used to motivate. A lot of times, whether it's on a march or whether it's on a run, cadences will help you get through. They take your mind off of your mistakes, they'll take your mind off of the work that you're actually doing and make it enjoyable. It motivates you. Mama, mama, don't you cry. Mama, don't you cry. Little boy gonna die. Little boy gonna die. Come on, it won't be alone. It won't be alone. Till we get on back home. Till we get on back home.
That's how y'all go on this game. Game tell y'all what to do, y'all go do what the game tell y'all to do. Because y'all don't want to do what y'all really want to do. What y'all are doing what y'all really want to do. Y'all want to kill people. You just can't do it in real life. So you'd rather do it in the game.
Non-violent crimes. A lot of guys have crimes such as stealing cars, joyriding, things of that nature. You'd be surprised at how many of these guys have maybe not even experienced any type of discipline or haven't accepted any type of discipline in their lives. But
no fault in the house.
These methods,
no dad in the house.
You get their attention. Some of them are graduating today, and after graduation, they'll probably be going home sometime next week. Won't be long, right?
But for most of the inmates, this is home. More than a prison.
Some of them are graduating today, and after graduation, they'll probably be going home sometime next week. Won't be long, right?
But for most of the inmates, this is home. More than a prison, the 24,000 acres of Parchman Farm houses a community of people coping with incarceration.
My name's Robert Jackson, MSP number 40288. Been here 18 years for murder.
In 1998, after 15 years in prison, Robert Jackson earned an unusual privilege.
Bob and I were married in 1965. We've known each other a long
A white man let him go home.
children.
Boy, y'all some bullshit.
Every 3
That white
months,
privilege
he
bullshit.
would join his wife for 3 days and nights in an apartment located at the site of Parchman's old camp number 3.
Okay, this, of course, is our dining area.
It's cluttered.
It's cluttered.
We got stuff piled up.
And this is the kitchen. And of course, that's the bath. We can go outside and barbecue, you know, listen to our, like the blues. So we get lost in our CDs or watch some TV, eat, go for walks. We've sat outside quite a bit today and we both got blistered, as a matter of fact. But we enjoyed the day.
35 years ago, we never thought it'd happen. We never thought
No, you don't think about things like that.
raised family.
You know.
For Robert Jackson, his crime is a distant memory.
Well, it's just a struggle with a gun, altercation, just a struggle with a gun.
Oh, bitch, you killed somebody, man, just like everybody else. When you get to go home, be with your wife, and black other prisoners in jail. Bunch of bullshit white privilege bullshit.
No one is there on site at the location.
They come up, blow the horn, blink the lights, you know.
Ain't that a beautiful sight, people? Look at that.
Daytime they'll come.
Y'all don't ever take time out to watch nothing.
Just go to the
Got
door,
them clouds and
stand
stuff.
in the door,
Up here.
let them see.
We gotta get that sun with that sun.
You know,
Get that sun, get that sun, get that
it's
sun.
over with till they come again.
Robert Jackson is eligible for parole, but it has not yet been granted. The Jacksons faced the very real prospect of conjugal visits in prison for the rest of their lives.
It's really the only thing a man's got to work for. I mean, it's the reward, I guess, for keeping it together, to control their lives.
The only thing that, of course, can go through your mind is enjoy the time you have, because it's very precious. And, of course, the day that he hopefully will come home.
For most of Parchman Farm's inmates, the future resembles the past. There's a 130-year-old struggle to survive until it's over.
I couldn't go hungry. I guess God has a family.
I'm facing life without parole. I will die as prison. I will be buried in a graveyard over here that they buried prisoners that have no family.
This is the convertible garage. That's the convertible. About to sell all of them. Get all new cars.
California's most vicious criminals square off. Correctional Officer John Gladson has experienced some of this violence firsthand. In his 23 years at San Quentin, he's been kicked, beaten, and stabbed. He's also gained the respect of guards and prisoners alike. Gladson makes his morning rounds, checks in on the prison's Westmont County unit, where new inmates are left to arrive. All of the inmates coming into Westmont are fresh off the bus from the county jails. Most of them have been in the prison system before and are back on parole violations.
These guys just got here from county jail. Most of them were violators. Very few first termers in that group.
Have you heard about the largest church in the world? The first service was March 3rd, 2008, with an attendance of over 300,000. The attendance is now over 2 million, and they conducted the first ever mass trance on March 17, 2008. What do they teach? Who you are requires no belief. Heaven is not a location, but refers to the inner realm of consciousness. The man on the cross is an archetypal image. He is every man and every woman. The leader's website teaches these lessons. My mind is part of God's. I am very holy. My holiness is my salvation. My salvation comes from me. Let me remember that there is no sin. Do not make the pathetic error of, quote, clinging to the old rugged cross, unquote. The only message of the crucifixion is that you can overcome the cross. Have you heard of this church? Or maybe its leader? Years ago, she denied Jesus is the only way.
One of the mistakes that human beings make is believing that there is only one way to live, and that we don't accept that there are
I stopped there to say this. The only reason why she said that there's another way to live instead of the straight and one way that there is to come here to this earth is between a man and a woman. She's saying there's another way because she wants to call herself making love to a woman when really they ain't making shit because they can't create shit when two of the same come together. A man and a man can't create shit and a woman and a woman can't create shit, so they ain't making love. They just plain old fucking. I'll say it again so you can understand, understand, and understand to get me. They're just doing the physical part of what the Creator created in us to do with us as conscious thinking humans living here together. That's only shared love in a transparent way is between two people, a man and a woman. No other way. And no other way to the divine in your mind, heart, body, and soul is between two people that's out of control, because everything that goes in nature is the opposite sex attract. It's man and it's man, it's woman and it's woman. There is no fucking room for that. But it is what it is, and it is in the front. Now, how we got there is our fault. The sheep supposed to be the people. Allow some bullshit to go straight frontward from the back door. Because when you think about that gay shit, dealing with two men, in the back door of anything is because you don't go through the front door because you don't want nobody to know that that's the way that you go. Not straight, crooked. I'm just saying. If it don't make sense, why are you trying to make sense out of it? Only something that makes sense makes something out of the sense that it makes. Think about it. Anything that does not make sense, people trying to make sense out of it, if you cannot explain properly what you're talking about, that doesn't make sense. Listen to me. I can explain everything that I talk about from the beginning to the end. You dealing with science, I'm dealing with the creator within me. I'm just saying, the truth is the truth, and it will set you free. And the only place where you can be free at to change from, and that's from your heart. That's where you start. That's where the creator comes from you to be here. The beat of your heart is part of the magnetic rotation or pull of this earth rotating into tomorrow. But you have to finish today. It is what it is. You don't even know why you pray. You just know what you was taught to do as a child. I'm just saying. Truth.
First ways of being in the world, that there are millions of ways to be a human being, and many ways, but many paths to what you call God. That her path might be something else, and when she gets there, she might call it the light. But her loving and her kindness and her generosity brings her, if it brings her to the same point that it brings you, it doesn't matter whether she called it God along the way or not.
And I guess the danger that could be in that, I mean, it sounds great on the onset, but if you really look at both sides,
there could possibly be just one way. What about Jesus? What about Jesus?
You say there isn't only one way. There is one way and only one way, and that is through Jesus.
There could possibly be
Jesus.
Today she has turned her millions of adoring fans over to New Age doctrine. Christians are letting this into their lives and are being deceived.
You know that your blood flowing, and you know that your brain is inside of you, and on the outside of you. So when you think about all the bullshit that you believe, all the bullshit that you believe in, there's something outside of you. When all there is the power of the creator in you to be a creator too. It is what it is, and you can feel the love unconditionally, which is creator. You just can't control the power that is that feeling of love unconditionally. That means that the creator is in you, loving you no matter what you do. But what you do, knowing you do, is what you do in the circle of life that's going to come back around to you. Because we live in what goes around comes around. Believe what that get down. Because when your turn comes, it's coming back 2 times to 4 times more to you.
Very charismatic minister. Everybody was, into the sermon. And this great minister was preaching about how great God was and how omniscient and omnipresent and God is everything. And then he said, and the Lord thy God is a jealous God. And I was, caught up in the rapture of that moment until he said jealous. And something struck me. I was like, I think about 27 or 28. I was thinking, God is all, God is omnipresent, God is all, and God's also jealous?
I got something like, why would the creator be jealous when the creator is in you? It is what it is. All the other shit is some bullshit that was taught to you so you can fear something that you don't know. But what you do know is that you do have life. You do have free will. You do have choices. And there is a creator of you. But that creator loves you to the point where you are the greatest creation of all. You are the creation that the creator decided to be a part of in conscious thought. Being a divine is always going on in your mind, but it's on you to put the thoughts together. Once you filter the thoughts that you're getting from the creator through that beating heart that is the creator too, once you put it all together, you're never alone as long as you know the truth is the creator is in you. I'm just saying. Until you know the truth, you won't know what that power is in you. You're going to continue believing in something outside of you to believe in. You answer the question for yourself. Which one is better? To believe in some bullshit or to know some real shit? To know what the truth is. God and Jesus was some man-made up bullshit to fool you and control you. You have to know within you the truth. I'm just saying. I love you more than you love you because I know the truth and you don't. That's why I'm on here every day telling you the truth so you can get the shit that you want. Because you believe in what you believe in. Hey, it is what it is. You don't have to believe in me, but I'm just going to tell you the truth for you to know. It's on you. Because I'm telling you exactly how it goes. I don't talk to your ass no more. I talk straight to your heart. Your ass is full of shit. Your ass is full of everything that you was taught to believe in. It's time to know. You see all the holes and all the bullshit that you was taught to believe in. Just as well as ask yourself the question. Is it your birthday or were you born? Meaning, it's your mother's birthday, you were just born. An empty glass waiting for some truth. Your mama gave you her birthday as a consolation prize because you wasn't born until you were born to the United States of America's Corporation. And your mama was given a birth certificate and social security card for you. It is what it is, because the call hit they will do. Welcome to ICU News, Weasel News, Weasel News. Me, Mr. Bassett, checking out the news here on Grand Theft Auto 5 for you. Have you ever thought to yourself why you have 5 fingers? Why you have 2 arms, 2 hands, 1 heart, 1 brain? That's the whole thing. You never wondered why, because you never asked the question why after wondering why, because you thought that somebody would think you was crazy because you asked the question why. It is what it is. The truth is the truth. You'll never be crazy when you ask them to find out what the truth is. I'm just saying. Why? Why the bottom? You're getting a helicopter landing right behind him. Because I want a helicopter landing right behind him. Well, one of them cars gonna flunk you in the street.
So we're going to talk about all of that